So first off, just tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of where you came from, where you are now, and what you're hoping to do in the future.
All right, well, my name is Shaun Ilahi, and I'm totally fine with you publicizing or publishing this in the public domain. But for a little background about myself, I would probably classify myself as a quasi first generation immigrant. My parents came, no, they're naturalized American citizens. I was born in the Midwest, actually in Wisconsin, but I left when I was maybe a couple years old and actually lived in the Middle East for a couple of years. Actually, we lived in Aramco, which is like an American compound within the whole Saudi Arabia country. And then we were actually evacuated during the first Gulf War, the Operation Desert Storm. So where when Kuwait or Iraq invaded Kuwait, they fired a couple Scud missiles kind of close to where our compound was. So we had sirens, gas masks, and as a kid, you thought it was pretty cool. But my parents had other ideas. So eventually we got evacuated to Pakistan. So I lived there. My parents are actually from India, but they migrated during the partition, which that area, so Bangladesh, Pakistan, India was actually one country, was actually India, and then colonized by the British. And when they left in 1947, we hear about Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Nehru, some of the other world leaders. Gandhi started the whole nonviolent movement that started when he was in South Africa. But long story short, they migrated because of the communal violence. And so then they made Pakistan their home. So I moved there maybe when I was in fifth grade, fifth grade, going back and forth a little bit between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Then ended up graduating high school there, and then ended up coming to college here in the United States. Went to school in New York City at Columbia University, and then actually so I was there, came there in 2000, and then was there for 9/11. So that also was a big change, or a lot of things happened, but was there, help with, went down to ground zero, try to help out. So stayed in New York City, Brooklyn for about 6, 7 years, then ended up going to law school. And then my sister was in Omaha, and actually I got a scholarship to go to law school here. So I ended up going to Creighton University, and I went back to New York. And so then actually, now that I kind of reflect, a lot of my life upbringing has been shaped through world events, from war to 9/11. Also in Pakistan, martial law. I was there to kind of see that happen as well, and see the different aspects of democracy and that sort of a narrative. And then so I'm a lawyer by trade, an attorney, and I was actually um, thought I was going to be one of those high-profile Wall Street lawyers. I don't know if you ever seen that show, Suits. It's like on a USA Network, where Harvey
Okay,
Specter's like
yeah.
this. Yeah, he's a big wig, and he's a mover shaker. So I always thought it was going to be something like that. But then, because of 2008, 2009 market crash, real estate crash, so that kind of put a damper on a lot of things too. But ended up working at a Fortune 500 company, in-house corporation work or corporate counsel. Then I just wasn't really passionate about the work I was doing there, making, not really helping the clients that I wanted to help. And so then ended up quitting that job, and then opened up my own private practice, started volunteering a lot for nonprofit organizations like Legal Aid of Nebraska, the Women's Center of Advancement, immigration clinic centers, and then this opportunity opened up at Habitat. So ended up applying for the general counsel position over there, and ended up getting that position. Worked there for about 6, 7 years, and now I'm actually at 75 North, which is actually another nonprofit, and I'm actually the chief compliance officer. So do a lot of the legal work, but also the strategic planning, operations, we're actually a small knit group. So in the nonprofit world, we actually wear a lot of different hats. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Kind of taking more of a legal role, but more of an executive role as well in this organization.
Awesome. Um, so where do you hope to go with your involvement? Seems like in the last few years or last decade or so, you've really started leaning toward humanitarian work. That's where you are now. Do you see yourself doing that for the rest of your working days, or do you have some bigger overarching goal that you'd like to eventually reach that is related to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been drawn to the humanitarian side. My dad, he's a physician, but he was always in the public sector of things, and he actually helped start a hospital in Pakistan. So he was always about giving back to the community, and looking at the more of the overall picture. So kind of giving you a snapshot of what 75 North does is they look at the holistic approach of things. So I've always been into the affordable housing spectrum, but now what we do is that we look at, healthy living to healthy lifestyle wellness, meaning that we have a greenhouse. We're looking at produce, sustainability, and basically health is a factor, one of the determinants of living a healthy life. And so if you have, an ailment or diabetes, is usually it's a lot of the preventative medicine that I believe we should focus on, to instead of treating the condition, we should treat what leads up to those conditions. And so this is kind of what 75 North does. And so I'm kind of enjoying it. But do I see myself in this arena? Yeah, I again, I could have gone to the corporate side sector and made a lot of money. And there's different elements of making change. So, for instance, if you do have a successful career in financial spectrum of things, how people give back is maybe donating their money. Other people donate their time, and I kind of like to blend both of those, where through financial planning as well as my expertise in this area. So, for instance, like some of the advocacy work that I do is that on a state level, we had like the payday lending, predatory lending. So basically, that's not a regulated business in the state of Nebraska. So, for instance, had if your car broke down and you needed $500 to repair it, usually banks won't lend you that much money because it's a small amount. And even if they did, usually they'll look at the credit history, and usually if you're living paycheck to paycheck, the probability is that you have bad credit. So people will go to these predatory lenders. And what ends up happening, a $500 loan takes about a couple of years to pay back. And by that time, you've paid $5,000 in fees. And so, I went to advocate on some of these people's behalf by testifying from the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau, just saying. And so, I mean, we just passed, or there was like, you might be familiar with this, but there was an initiative, on the ballot initiative, where, should this be regulated? So, we talk about usury laws. So usury is like a very biblical term, where you're not supposed to charge too much high interest of somebody in need. And so there's no usury laws with these lenders. So for me, the impact in the humanitarian work is more, I like to get more involved in the systemic side of change, rather than just changing, the more the quote where you can teach person how to fish, or you can just catch the fish for them. So I see myself in this side, the nonprofit side, but just trying to figure out as I progress, whether it's through my career, how do I affect more of that change in a more of a citywide, statewide level, is still to be decided. But I think we live in a world now, in a state, in a city, in a community that is always changing, and you just got to be adaptable. And where you can affect those changes, you just find where your role fits. So I think right now, is in the nonprofit housing slash healthy eating slash public transportation. So we were involved in public transportation too. In Omaha, I don't know how familiar you are with Omaha, but so I've lived in a lot of different areas, and it's a fairly segregated community. So in North Omaha, a lot of the more of the African Americans live. South Omaha, more of the Hispanics. West Omaha, more of like the white demographics live. And so living in New York City, for instance, what makes New York great, it's a great immigrant town because you have people coming in and out, and labor force, depending on, the service industry. Like a lot of the greatest, not a lot, but a lot of the great chefs are Mexicans because, that labor is just conducive. The culinary labor is just conducive in New York City because it's a big population, people have to eat. But the public transportation is great because when you're in a subway, you're forced to interact with, whether you like it or not, you're forced to interact with people of different languages. You'll hear 5 to 10 different languages in the subway. You're forced to see people on a different socioeconomic level who might be rich to blue collar, poor students to people who are blind to, and you'll see people hustling, making money, musicians. So you get exposed to a lot. Over here, what happens is that it's a very car-driven society. So usually you live in your own bubble. And granted, we're not saying public transportation creates those bubbles. We create our own bubble through our social media, but you in your car, you listen to your NPR News or your Fox News, go see the same people, you come back and you do the same thing every day. And so talking about what the community aspect of, like, what kind of society I would like to live in, would be one of, where people are forced to share public transportation. Like, I think that the whole modus operandus of what is ownership. So for instance, I was actually talking to one of my friends about iTunes. Apple came out with a new iPhone, and so we were just talking about iPods. I remember when I first got my iPod, I was like, this is amazing. I know, I mean, this might be before your time, but Napster and downloading music was awesome. You want to have that ownership. Like, I own this huge, like 5,000 songs, but now it's like, you know what? I'd rather have my Spotify and just have, like, pay that subscription of sharing, the sharing mechanism. And so it's the whole model of what community is now, is more having that sharing model of, when you have Netflix, you don't own DVDs anymore, you subscribe to it. And so I think having that mind shift with public transportation is going to be coming in, and even the community. And it goes beyond public transportation, goes down to food as well, and food deserts. So I think that, what I enjoy now is more of that strategic planning of the model of what does a community look like now in terms of sharing in food and travel. And so, long story short, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I think this is the realm I enjoy, and I can affect change.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I've grown up in Omaha my entire life, and I have traveled a bit with family, and through school and stuff. And Omaha is very, may not be unique compared to quite a few other cities, but compared to New York, it is unique in the fact that it is very segregated. And I've lived in West Omaha pretty much my whole life, so I can get in my car, go to the store, Target, and it's pretty much just all white people, driving their big Suburbans and stuff. So it's weird when you hop in the car and then drive to downtown Omaha for, a dinner date or something. And it's almost like a completely different city, even though it's just 10 miles away. Yeah. And that's one reason why I want to get into traveling and, travel nursing, to just explore these different cities and see what's out there. Cause I know there's a lot that's different than, West Omaha and Lincoln that I'm so used to now. So it's great that you brought that up. And I think that's interesting, the idea of, like a shared communal transportation system that is different than what we have now. And I wouldn't be surprised, you're right, with the way everything's moving, it's subscriptions left and right. Seems like nowadays if it's on the internet, it's subscription based.
Right,
Can't get out of
exactly.
it. So Um, let's see what we have. So, you talked a little bit about Habitat for Humanity. Could you quickly kind of sum up what Habitat for Humanity, what their goals are, what they kind of try and do in the community, and how you fit into that?
Yeah, so my time at Habitat for Humanity, so I was only a lawyer there, so we grew from about 50 employees to now well, when I left, it was about 115 employees. So we saw a big transition. And so Habitat main focus is in affordable housing, and they have a volunteer-based model. So that's kind of what keeps the cost down. So a lot of the construction, certain stuff are outsourced to subcontractors, and others volunteers can help build and keep the costs down. So they do housing, but then they also do a lot of retail. So the restore is what they call it, and so it's like a cheap version. Excuse me, it's a cheap version of Menards or Lowe's, where construction companies will donate their goods, and so and Habitat are also lenders. So usually the misnomer is that it's not a handout, but it's a hand up. And so basically people pay for their homes. They actually have to do sweat equity, like usually it's about 250 or 350 hours of sweat equity. Um, and then also my role too is, real estate, a lot of real estate, you need to acquire the land, you need to, and then again, like when we talk about preventative health wise, there's also like ways to, I don't know, the terminology is preventative, not to lose your wealth, but one of the great tools in accumulating wealth is through home ownership. And what happens is that a lot of times homes, a grandparent doesn't have a will, and so then the grandchild will live in the house, and then by that time, if they decide to want to get a loan, or if they want to sell the property, they can't because they don't have title to the property. They don't have owner. You have to show you own the property once your parents die by, like, going to court, or you have a will. So a lot of these legal, like they don't know these legal ins and outs, and so then they leave the house, and they're not able to transfer this wealth onwards to the children. So a lot of my focus also is giving those legal knowledge and helping guide these individuals in the community of like how to retain that wealth. Also, I did a lot of advocacy work. So my time when I did work at Habitat, I went to testified for against the predatory lending, or to promote more of the predatory lending laws. And then, so yeah, I mean, every day was something different. Every day is also, as a lawyer too, you are, you assess risk management skills, how to protect the organization, but also at the same time to how to push beyond, to be creative and create new programs. So it's a balancing act. But and we also provide resources for families that come in. So at Habitat, so there's also people are more become our senior, and just figuring out to provide them sources with ARP um, and other legal issues that sometimes we can't help out with. So sometimes people come in with divorces, and then how do you split up the property? And so we kind of help, either I'll help guide them or give them other resources to navigate those matters. So, and now so that was what I was doing there. And at 75 North is kind of, now we're taking more of the holistic approach too, of what encompasses. So we have like it's called a purposeful built community. So what does the community look like now? So when you build homes, if you just build a lot of affordable housing, how does that help the community? Because usually when the research that's been done, you want to have a mixed income use. So meaning that you want maybe a third affordable housing, a third market rate, and maybe a third of townhomes, a third of apartment rows. So you have a good selection a good mix of socioeconomic levels to help with the community, help build ties into the community. And so that is kind of the approach now that I'm involved with too. Like, what is that holistic approach? Like, when we were talking about public transportation, so what we are doing now is like a road diet. So one of these main corridors, like on 30th Street, it actually used to be a 4-lane highway. So it'd be a lot of fast cars going. And now we want to promote walking. Walking is helps with health. So how do we promote that? Because it's dangerous walking in like a fast highway. So we did like a road diet. So we shorten do like a 1 or 2 lane roads and put a couple of speed bumps, and also included like a bike lane. So not only are we trying to promote people walking, but people biking, making more healthier life choices, and also creating, working with MAPA, which is like the metropolitan agency for public transportation, and creating more bus routes could come up more at more times during the day for people to get to work and come back. And so that's another approach we're looking at too. And also we talked about like healthy living, maybe incorporating like a food desert. So there's been research where people, when there's a food desert, meaning that there's no natural produce or a store that gives produce, then there's more likelihood of um, diabetes because people will eat junk food. And so if you encourage other people or healthy organization, grocery stores to come and have these products available, like you'll see an uplifting in the community. So there's stuff like that we are looking into as well, down to like we talked about senior living too. Or so when you build a community, a lot of times, when you look at the elections, when you the polling people, you're like, what do you want? And so you have to listen to the community. And so usually what we're trying to do too is listen to the community. One of the aspects is senior living. And, as hopefully, I think there's been a little regression in life expectancy for developed countries, is that there's going to be a growing senior population. And when you're in nursing too, you'll see a lot of that. Like, how do you address that? Like, do you have assisted facilities? Do you have senior living facilities? And if you have senior living facilities, you want them to live like a healthy and productive lifestyle. It's like, how are they going to have transportation? Do they have amenities for like a coffee shop? And so we have a coffee shop here. We have some starting retail businesses. And so we're also building a senior living facility as well that should be completed next year. So yeah, so that's kind of what my role has been in the nonprofit world for the last about 7, 8 years.
So it sounds like you do quite a bit, and a wide variety too. It's not just like quite a bit in one topic or one area. It's trying to reach out to the entire community with that holistic approach, like you said. Is there one aspect of all of that that you find most meaningful?
Oh yeah, no, I think for me, like I've always been like the fast pace, like living in New York for such a long time too. Like I like information. I like to uh, big thinking. I like kind of figuring out everything. I guess it's maybe like the what jack of all trades, master of none. But I think at the end of it, like people have different needs. And I think like when you go into nursing or even like medicine, there's different needs of pediatricians. Like there's like oncology. There's different all these different types of aspects of like the healthcare field. And so I guess the law is similar too, where if you see lawyers in private practice, they get specialized. For me, I don't like to be pigeonholed. Like I just kind of, when I go out, people don't even think I'm a lawyer. Just the way, um, I present myself sometimes more casual. And so I think a lot of my folks has been in real estate in terms of acquiring stuff, but I think I enjoy it all. Like I love being strategic, big thinking. Where do we see ourselves in 5, 10 years? How do we get there? Trying to think way in the future. And half the time you might be wrong, but other half the time you just have to make the choices you have and kind of predict what's going to happen. I enjoy that. So, and that doesn't normally necessarily correlate to staying the legal side of it, because like I guess the positions that I have gotten or been in encompasses not only the legal side, but the business side, the operations side, the advocacy side, the fundraising side, the telling the story side. So a lot of times through the nonprofit is telling the story, because everybody likes a good story. And I think that's kind of one of the things where kind of drew me to the legal side of it, is that if you look through the course of history, the it's like even when you look at religion, like the best orders, the best like stories, or the Odyssey, the Iliad, Ganesh, like in India, or even religion, like the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, like this all started through storytelling. And so, and I think it's human nature, and we'll always enjoy that. And just when you hear a feel-good story, I mean, it makes you feel good, draws inspiration. And so I think for me, it's just kind of telling the story and kind of getting that vision, and that encompasses different aspects of my job now.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, these next few questions focus on your artwork and kind of where that's been. So I don't know a lot about it, but I did see on your website and then an interview you did with the Daily Nebraskan as well, that they interviewed you about your artwork in a little bit. So I guess my question for you is, at what point did you realize that artwork was one of your passions, and how did you realize how that could affect your work as a lawyer?
Yeah, I think the when you ever ask somebody, I guess when they're grown or is like in any job, like maybe they're not comfortable be calling themselves an artist. And so I never thought of myself as an artist, because you see Picasso's and the Rembrandts or all these, like, it's like, yeah, like my art's never going to make me millions of dollars. So that label. But I think when I look back in my life, I think I've always been drawn to it. And I think growing up as a kid, there, through my own life experiences and stuff that I had to deal with, there sometimes you don't have the words for it, and so you explore different mediums to share ideas you have in your head that sometimes you just are not, maybe your brain is not developed in how to use words. So I played the piano as a kid, and I was always drawn to music, and then I picked up a camera when when I probably at the end of high school. I just started taking pictures, and then I started writing as well. So I enjoy exploring different mediums, and I think those different mediums bring out different ideas in my head. Sometimes I'm not able to understand, or sometimes after I come out with like a picture, like why did I shoot this? Like what was the composition? Why, like, or if I was making music, what makes me feel a certain way? Why, like, or the lyrics, or if I'm writing something, or I want to get something published. So it helps me kind of understand the world I live in, and I think that and also make sense of things that are happening, whether it's deals with political events, day-to-day events. And so I thought, and people thought it was good. And so I made a music album too when I was in college. So I was gonna be a rock star. So somewhere I worked with another friend of mine, and so we made an album. A couple TV shows liked it and used it in their TV shows. So thought we were gonna make it big. But then it's a hustle living in New York City too. But then I was taking pictures, and one of my advisors said that, why don't you do a show at Columbia? And then I was like, well, I have no idea how to do any of this. So she kind of helped guide me through like, this is how you do it, how to put on a show. And then it was just kind of, sometimes it's like a little bit of luck, but then people got good reviews, got written up. And so then it kind of just kept with it. So I've always enjoyed the story aspect of it. I know I kind of talked about my legal side, but also, art is a storytelling mechanism. Photography comes the easiest to me, but when you take a picture, you're telling a story, like why, what's going to be in the frame, and what are you going to shoot it of? And I like taking shots and actually writing about it as well, and a little more open language. And I feel that, and with art, people can relate. Doesn't matter what your background is, or how you look. There's certain things with art that brings out emotions and feelings. It makes you feel something. And I think for me, like, what makes what how I enjoy art, and art's different for everybody. But for me, what makes good art is when it invokes a feeling that maybe you knew you had, maybe you didn't have, but you see something and it speaks to you. Like, and so usually sometimes people would always ask, like, well, what was the inspiration, or why did you, like, what was the thought behind it? Which before I wasn't too comfortable, because I wanted the viewer to have their own relationship to it. But I mean, I'll tell people how I feel or what I was thinking about it when I was doing it, but I usually like to ask them first, like, what are you taking out of it? Because when you create art, I think that one friend told me once was that when you make art, you always think it belongs to you, but it does not belong to you. It belongs to the world. So put yourself out there, give it out. And so basically meaning you're just a signal, or, you're just like an outlet for this artwork that's coming out. And might be some force using you as like the brush or the picture, but it belongs to the world. And whatever meaning, sometimes the artwork will take a meaning of its own. But yeah, so I kind of knew inside that art was like, it was an easy way for me to communicate things in my head that I wasn't able to communicate through words. But as I kind of progress, like, words, and now, I mean, I can kind of use words to give a story as well. And I think the law aspect of it kind of helps with it too, where when you make an argument, is either going to be written or an oral argument. So it's kind of, a lot of stuff is blending together as I progress in my life.
So would you say the ability of art to kind of tell a story without using any sort of words, and it's just those other mediums to tell a story, is that one of the most meaningful things about art that really hits home with you, and that's why you've pursued it all your life?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think with art, just it's some multifaceted, and I think that um, I remember talking to this one developer, and she said that a good when, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Blackstone or Benson. Like, these are upcoming neighborhoods in the area, and like what makes this like, and when you travel to other cities, I've been to like Dallas, Denver. I travel a lot, and so for me, when I was talking with her, I was like, what makes, like, why are these areas, pockets, like, rising up? And she said, a third, a third is usually the gays, a third is the art, and a third is just like the people that, that make the area that's like, and so basically she was saying with the art part aspect of it is that with people like art, I mean, and you might, and art is multifaceted. So when I say art, I'm talking about performance art, music, galleries. And so it's impactful, it's powerful. And so sometimes when you talk about law, for instance, or even talk about, like, reading books as an art form, but do people have the time to sit in this day and age where the attention span is getting less and less and less? When you have like TikTok, which is, or you have a minute of somebody's attention, they're not going to read a 500-page book, a 300-page book. I mean, people will do it, but I think with some of these art where it's more flat, you can just, it's all presented to you in a short time span. Like people can, you can talk to people. And so I think sometimes for me, like, when you talk about people that want to be misunderstood, usually people go towards art to tell a story. And even that, and then, you can still be misunderstood. But I think that I always enjoy just being sharing the human side of a story and being provocative. And I think that, based on my life experiences, whether when I was in New York City, I got stopped and frisked, and so, or harassment and stuff with law enforcement. So a lot of times too, it's like, well, how can I relay those stories sometimes in a more succinct way that people can, whether they get my story or not, but they will get a story of maybe their life, and maybe they can see things in a different way. It's all about perspective and changing just the perspective to show that, um, we're all humans. We all want the basic things in life, enjoy life and be happy. So I think with the art that I do is like more of, which I enjoy, is like creating a story where people can kind of, it's impactful, and you don't have to like sit down with it for 2-3 weeks to finish, like, with a book or something like that. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question, but I went on a couple tangents. But
That's all right. It was a good answer nonetheless. Um, Kind of bouncing off that, do you think that your work as an artist, or if you don't want to use that label, just your artwork, or your work as an attorney, do you think one of those speaks louder than the other, or do you think it really kind of depends on the story being told and the situation that it's in?
yeah, I think it just depends. Like, and like in life, it's like everything is a dance. You guys realize what kind of music is playing. If it's like a slow dance, you go in that rhythm. If it's like who your audience is, and so when the work I'm doing right now is it's a very holistic approach. I need to use my legal skills, but also I need to use my storytelling skills. So how do I kind of incorporate telling a story? It's like an art form. So I think it encompasses everything. So for instance, like, mathematics, when you're a physicist, or you're making like a nuclear bomb or something, but the math, the formulas, numbers, that's all a language. It's an art form. How do you make that, succinct? And so I think my legal career, I'd have to kind of incorporate those artistic skills I've learned. But I think, for instance, in Blackstone, I actually have a mural up there, of me, about like it's like kind of deals with law enforcement, being an immigrant, bringing culture into the Nebraskan American Midwestern fabric, community fabric. And so I think that's impactful, where you have people that are younger, and you got to know your audience too. So I think a lot of people, um, not a lot, but for the most part, the younger you are, the more likely it is for you to be more progressive. So maybe show art, or show stuff like a mural of me, kind of like in a hands up gesture, uh, that might speak more to that audience. If it speaks to an audience of maybe older, more conservative, it wouldn't sit well. Which actually, my mural was actually asked to be removed. So it's actually, this is the second location, but that group of people, was more conservative. Again, these are my assumptions, but that's why it was asked to be removed. So I guess also, I was saying, the dance, the music, the rhythm, what rhythm to play. You just got to figure out what's going to get the message across. And so you want to be as open and as open and inclusive to the people that you're trying to communicate and help with. And so sometimes it might be the art side of it, sometimes it might be the legal side of it, or the corporate side of it. You just kind of bounce through what it entails. Like, for instance, like in nursing too, or medicine, when you're taking care of a patient, you got to figure out which skills you want, like start to stop. the soft skills or the hard skills. Does this person, like, you want to ask them what's wrong with you, they're not going to open it up. Sometimes you just gotta be approach it in a way that they will be comfortable telling their story. And so that's our art form of how to make people comfortable to treat the the disease or whatever they have. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Also, my last question for you was just if you have any last comment or you want to leave anyone who's listening to this podcast with a final thought, um, this would be the time for that.
no, I mean, I'm actually super happy that you kind of reached out, because I think that you have to be curious, and I think, I mean, you show a lot of that, and you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think in this day and age where um, people are set in their bubbles, but I think you need to keep on, I want to say, reinventing yourself, but you got to keep on adapting to different circumstances. And so, for instance, like for me, like I travel all over the world. So sometimes people come to me, it's like, well, what do you like? How's Nebraska like? And so it's like, well, I really don't know much about Nebraska outside of Omaha and Lincoln. And so then I made an effort the last couple of years to go out to farms to, like, see how other people live, or how they, what their beliefs. And I spend weekends with farmers and just cook for them, and they take me out to their, like, the farms. I take pictures, do the whole documenting, storytelling. And so I think that is important, especially with your young folks, to kind of go out and explore, travel. Travel is one of the best ways to learn, like, personal development, where go learn a different language, go be the minority, go where people don't, like, look like you. And so, I mean, and I think that you'll be surprised that there's different ways, different, like religion, just different ways to the path of a spiritual, well lived life. And different religions have different avenues of getting there. And I think that when you travel to and you see different cultures, there's different ways of living, there's different ways of seeing the world. And you become a better person, become more open. But yeah, be be curious, be adaptable, be uncomfortable. Even now we're talking about race, and race is such a, and it's not going anywhere. Racism, has existed for millennia, centuries, and it's going to continue forward too. But broaden, like, create friendships with people that don't look like you, or and then you just become a better person all around. And I think that when you work on yourself, you help the community as well. So when for instance, me, you travel nurse, you might go all over the world, and then at one point, like, might be like, 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 hey, Troy, what do you want to do with your life now? It's like, well, I want to come back to Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska, small or wherever, and start up my own nursing clinic or something. Or I can maybe add more things I've learned, like the Eastern Western medicine, holistic approaches, like how do you treat a person, like is it through is it through narcotics, or is it through lifestyle, like dietitians, or there's so many different ways that your mind just opens up. And community needs that. And just yeah, just continue what you're doing, reaching out to people and just being persistent, and fail forward too. People are afraid to, you're always like afraid to kind of like disappoint or to fail. But you should just reframe it. It's like, well, just that thing didn't work out, I'm just gonna try a different way to get to where I want to go. So that's kind of my advice. And again, I'm still learning too, and everybody at the end of the day, everybody's winging it. So if somebody says no, that's that person. But just like, my whole life, I've always been told no. I just find creative ways to get around it, or find creative solutions to kind of keep on moving forward. So that was kind of be me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. And your comment on being comfortable with being uncomfortable, I can really relate to that. Because every day in college, it's like, okay, what can I do next to push myself? And almost everything is like a little bit out of the comfort zone. But I just tell myself it's those baby steps outside the comfort zone that expands the comfort zone. And that's a big reason why I want to go into travel nursing, because I know that having to meet new people every 13 weeks and be in a totally different environment that's nowhere like home, I think that will really push me to, become a different, more holistic person, kind of like you mentioned. So, yeah, I think that's great advice. And again, thank you so much for taking the time. I realize we went a little bit over that 30-minute mark, but I got a lot out of this, and I think I learned a lot, and I hope anyone who's listening to this in the future does as well.
Yeah, anytime you want to reach out too, you got my contact info, so don't hesitate. And good luck with everything. And yeah, thanks for inviting me onto this. You're being part of this honors project.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So thank you again, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. See you.
Bye.